What's going on, travel family, Point Noirians? Thanks for coming back to tune into another session from the Point Noir podcast, where we not only inspire but equip men of color to go and see the world for themselves. I'm your host, your MC, your tour guide for this audio experience, as always, Jerry the Third, aka Kimono Jack. And real quick, we talk about equipping men of color. If you want to see who our passport winner was for the month of February, hit us up on IG at Point Noir Show. We're going to announce it in our stories today. That's where you can stay up to date with everything that's going on with Point Noir, trips we have coming up, opportunities we have coming up. We might even drop a secret show here or there. Hey, y'all got to stay in the know. Y'all got to stay hip. Follow us on IG. That's where all the goodies are. So at Point Noir Show, that's where you can find us. But today's the 37th session of the Point Noir podcast. Always excited to share another unique travel perspective from an insightful man of color. And we have just that coming up for you. So stay tuned. Let's introduce him right now. Joining us today as our special guest at The Point is Aaron Oschea. You can follow him on Instagram at Aaron Oschea, and I'm so grateful that he was able to come on the show and share his unique perspective, not so much about travel, but more about adventure and reframing stereotypes and misconceptions when it comes to people of color and men of color in the outdoors and in nature. Just a few years ago, he got introduced to his first trail hike, and it literally transformed his life. Since then, he's been out hiking trails by himself, encouraging other people that look like him to do the same, and this has culminated in him creating this amazing community called the Midwest Color Camp, where he not only encourages men of color but other marginalized communities to go experience kind of like the healing power of nature, leading trips, educating people, telling them what awesome stuff is out there for them. He shares his enthusiasm for sure on this interview, so if you're into nature, you're going to love this one. And if you're not into nature, definitely stay tuned, because you might find a reason or two to at least give it a try, because his words are just very relatable and I think powerful. So as always, get your refreshing beverage of choice, find that cozy spot on the couch, sit back and get ready for another amazing Point Noir experience. Hey, what's going on, Aaron? Welcome to The Point. Thank you for joining us. How are you feeling today, bro?
Pretty good.
You seem unsure. What's going on?
Oh no, so I just got back from a climbing gym that I signed up for last night actually, and I had my first session today, and I went climbing, and so I am feeling the effects of a first time climber.
Okay, got you. So were you like in a training class? Did you have a one-on-one session? And we're talking about rock climbing, right?
Yeah, so it's indoor climbing, which is called bouldering. And no, it was just me. I went in and like got my shoes and my chalk and everything, and then I just did it all myself.
Okay, so starting off with some Spider-Man vibes right here, a little Miles Morales. I got you.
A little bit. Urban Spider-Man, like urban Spider-Man.
Extra urban, stay strapped in these streets. I got you. That's what's up, bro. Well, I'm excited you're on the show, man. There were some things in your IG profile that caught my attention, regarding things like bouldering and being outdoors in the wilderness and nature. And I just wanted to get your perspective and hear about your story as an adventurer and also a traveler. So let's start off with that, man. Tell us where you're coming from and about some of your travels.
So I am from the south side of Chicago, Par Hundreds. For anybody that's familiar with Chicago, you already know that that's like the predominantly black and brown area of Chicago.
Yeah.
And growing up, I didn't really have a lot of outdoors experience. So this sort of genre of adventure is still, I would say I'm still sort of newish in exploring. I've just been nonstop about exploring ever since I started.
Okay.
So a few years ago, I had a friend who had grew up hiking, camping, getting outdoors. She was from the Pacific Northwest. And so like this was part of her life. She talked about, getting outside a lot, and I was pretty apprehensive about it initially because it's just, one, not something that I had grew up doing and was familiar with. And then also there was a lot of baggage, I will call it, from like generational baggage and generational trauma associated with being out in nature, being out in the woods, in the forest, and things like that.
Like specifically to you and your family lineage, or you mean just in the narrative of blacks in America?
So, I mean, as a black person in America,
Okay, we'll talk about that.
yeah. So she convinced me to agree to essentially a bet, and if I lost the bet, then I would go hiking with her.
Okay, but if you won, you went on a date with her. How did this work? What were the stakes here?
But if I won, I think it was like something like treat. I don't know. I said something silly like treat me to the movies or something stupid like that. But the bottom line is that I lost the bet. I don't even remember what the bet was. I lost the bet. I ended up going on this hike with her, and the entire time there, I was talking about like my apprehensions and like things that made me nervous about doing this. And so we chatted it up a little bit, and then when we got to the actual hiking spot, Starved Rock State Park here in Illinois, we sat in the car for a while because I was just like, it was finally real that like I'm really going hiking out in the woods, and like it was already getting late, and just like everything that I had feared about being outdoors was like right there in my face. And essentially I made the
Yeah,
decision.
you was outside,
Yeah.
outside.
So like out Star Rock State Park is like nature. There's no like city infrastructure around Starved Rock. I just made the decision that like if I'm gonna ever do this, I need to do it right now. We've driven all the way out here. It would be ridiculous to just like not go hiking. And so I did. And almost instantly I fell in love with being outdoors. And not even just like
Mm.
a casual fall in love. It was like something deep that I felt like was there the entire time and I just didn't know it. That's the essentially the origin story of how I got started hiking.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's powerful, bro. And I really resonate with the fact that you shared. It felt like there was something deep inside of you because you mentioned the heritage, but there's a heritage we don't share a lot about. The first
Mm-hmm.
cowboys, the first trailblazers being
Mm-hmm.
black, or the Seminole Indians down in Florida and Oklahoma. So we've been a part of some of the people who've literally paved the way for these cities and the West to be what's the best way to say it, to be Americanized, because there's a lot of takeover of indigenous people's land and stuff like that. But we were part of that heritage too. So it's interesting that you felt a connection to it because that's a part of your history too, our history.
It's definitely a part of our history.
Yeah, man. So hiking got you kind of hooked, got you in there. What was that hike like? Like, how long were you guys out there for? Did you lose track of time? What did you feel in that experience that just overwhelmed you and gave you this deep passion for the activity?
So I believe we were probably out there for about 3 or 4 hours. Like I said, when we got there, it was already like starting to get a little darker, and so I didn't want to be, out
Right.
there in the pitch dark on my first time, like hiking. It just wasn't something I wanted to do. So we went hiking, and like I said, we got out there, we got situated, and the thing was probably about 30 minutes into walking on the trail. I just sat down and sat. I believe it was like a rock or like a rock bench, something sort of man-made-ish. But I just sat there for like an hour, just taking everything in.
Mhm.
And up until that point, I really thought that I had like felt that feeling because in Chicago we have like a lot of like really nice nature-esque like city parks, but it's still surrounded by city sounds
Right.
and city smells.
Right.
And so,
Urban structures and stuff like that.
yeah, urban life. And so when I was actually out at Starved Rock State Park, like I said, it was something that was very deep feeling that came to the surface. And I just sat and took it all in, the sounds, the animals, the water, the trees, like the wind blowing, all of it. I don't know, man. It's still like something that even right now talking about it, I get a little emotional about it because it just meant so much. And it really
Yeah.
like forced me to think about why I hadn't gotten outside in the first place and who else feels that way. Yeah, it was I don't know. It was overwhelmingly beautiful.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. And I can relate to those similar experiences, just being overwhelmed by the beauty and all the different positive attributes of nature. And after you had this first experience, like what was your next response? Did you go back and tell all your friends like, yo, we got to go hiking next week? Like, did you make it a habit right away?
I actually did. On the actual hike, like before we left the state park, I told myself that, I need to get my friends and family out here because if this did this for me and like I consider myself sort of a person that's open to like experiencing things just in general. So if this did this for me, what more could it do for like my friends that
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with that barely even went to the city park, you know? And just right away, I knew that it was something that I
Right.
wanted more people, specifically my mother, to experience. And it was just something that I knew needed to be an important and like central thing in my life.
Okay. So then the next weekend, you guys packed a few lunches. The whole family went skipping through Starved Rock State Park again, and it was all good, right?
Absolutely not. um, so I came home, and I remember one of the first people that I told about it was one of my best friends growing up. His name was Nehru. His name is Nehru. I'm sorry. And he was like, "Why the hell would you do that?" And he was in the military, and he had experience being around the world and being, in different spaces. And even still, just like the thought of just going out into like this space, this nature space that you don't know anything about and you don't know like the circumstances and what might happen and all of these apprehensions that just are there. It came out like right away with one of the first people that I shared this experience with. So, getting friends and family outdoors was definitely not as easy as I actually thought it was going to be.
Right.
Even still now, and I've been, getting outdoors for several years now, and it's still sometimes I'm met with like, you do what? You what? You, huh? What? And so, yeah.
I mean, I can imagine it. And like you said, a lot of times we're not exposed to it, and we don't know what else goes on out there. So we hear these terrible stories. That could be, I mean, it could be so many things. It could be something like a lynching.
Generational stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's not even really a lot of the apprehensions that I hear, like when I talk to people, specifically Black people. It's not something that like they experience or like their family immediately experience. They're drumming up the history of what it's meant for African descendant people to be in the woods. It's not a pretty history.
So what have you heard? What are the ones that come up the most frequently?
Some of the most things that like people hit me with like right away as sort of a defense is the history of lynching in the woods, and the history of escape, like slaves that would, you escape, you go into the woods, and either you made it to freedom or you were never heard from again, or you were drugged back and then, treated like an animal in front of everybody else. So
Wow.
there is still right now a lot of generational trauma from things that happened during slavery.
That's the word, bro.
that keeps us from like even wanting to try to see what the outdoors is about. It's just like I try to think of it as like a defense mechanism, but really it's a barrier. It's just something that is right now. It's in the way of experiencing something that we are African descended people. Nature is one with us,
Hmm.
so it's something that I believe should be more prominent in all of our lives.
Yes, bro. I totally received that. And the fact that you said trauma, that is absolutely the correct term. That's generational trauma. That's a part of the history that we learn and absorb. And that is a defense mechanism.
Yeah,
But it's incredible that in this age where we have technology, literally a supercomputer in your pocket in the form of your smartphone,
yeah,
that, that simple relationship isn't made clear. That's real trauma.
definitely.
So, in your pursuit of nature and wanting to see more adventures, have you been able to travel and have similar experiences wherever these adventures led you? Like, have you gone overseas and done adventurous stuff? Have you mostly stayed domestically? How has travel been incorporated with this?
So for the most part, for me, I prefer to stay local, and by local, I mean like the
Hmm.
Midwest. And that's a very
Okay.
deliberate and like calculated decision on my part. Um, Mainly because of the fact that in terms of travel and the outdoors and exposure to like life outside of the brick and mortar lifestyle, the Midwest doesn't really get enough shine, in my opinion. Um,
You're absolutely right.
yeah,
That's science. There is less shine in the Midwest
it,
than the coast.
it's just we
Facts.
just don't get the exposure that I feel like we deserve. So for like largely that purpose, I try to center my personal travels around going places that are in the Midwest.
Okay.
I mean, yeah,
Okay,
there's
bet. And just real quick, because we'll jump back to
mhm.
it, because I want to dive into the Midwest. I'm a fan. I've become a fan of the Midwest. Have you traveled overseas much?
I have been overseas, not a whole lot, but
Okay.
I've done some traveling.
Okay, not a problem. So this is awesome because we're recording. This is live. There's no scripted questions on this show,
Right.
but I am a huge fan of domestic travel because
Mhm.
there are so many hidden gems. Not even hidden. There are just so many gems in the diversity that is the United States of America, and people need to discover them. What's in their own backyard.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of people are intimidated by the show or even being guests on the show because they see these people who've hit 50 different countries and it's all international travel. But I've literally been looking for someone who could be an expert on domestic locations and their experiences as a man of color. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to have you on the show. I just wanted to make sure that was all clear on the air.
Yeah.
Just for others listening, because we're going to talk about domestic shit in the Midwest. Midwest is going to get some shine, and this episode is going to be fucking lit. And that's
Yeah.
just what it is. You know what I'm saying?
That's just what it is.
So talk to me about the Midwest. What are some unsung gems of the Midwest? What are some locations that people need to check out, and what will they find there?
So it's crazy because the Midwest is like so beautiful and so varied in the type of natural settings that we have, and people really don't know it. So,
Hmm.
like for instance,
Yeah.
there are a bunch of long distance trails that are like hundreds or like thousands of miles long, and the two like major ones are primarily on the coast of the US. But we have several, several long distance hikes, which are called through hikes. And we have several of them here in the Midwest, and people don't even know it. Like we have an entire long distance hike in Ohio that it's a circle around the entire state, and that is it's crazy
Wow.
because like you can literally set out, on day one of summer 2019, and then be walking around Ohio for the entire summer. And it's that is like an adventure itself. So we do have like several through hikes that I definitely feel like don't get enough shine, but we also have the second largest cave system in the U.S. So, and it's in
Ooh.
Iowa. And like, people treat it like what's in Iowa besides cornfields? Well, the second largest cave system in the US is in Iowa.
Wow. So you mean when people are going out to, Cancun or parts of Mexico to go hang out in caves, they could do that in Iowa?
Yeah, you can do that in Iowa. And
Wow.
so I'm in Chicago, and the cave system in Iowa is called Makokita Caves. And
Okay.
it's only about a 5 hour drive. You can also like take the train there. It's like the access is there. It's just people don't know that it's there. Yeah, so there's that. Like over in the Dakotas, there are some national parks that like the scenery is ridiculous. Like Badlands National Park, it is so gorgeous.
Bro, Badlands are fire.
Yeah,
I
no,
wanna
no. I just see like that's what I see. What you just did is what I want to spark and inspire in people. Just like there's a thing that happens when you think of natural spaces in the Midwest. That's what I want for more people.
Yeah. I'm with the outdoor thing. I grew up on the AT.
Oh,
So I
okay.
spent a lot of time on the Appalachian
Yeah.
Trail, between as far north as Pennsylvania, but also spent a lot of time near Harper's Ferry towards kind of like the start of it
Okay.
down in Virginia and in Maryland. And so I'm a fan of it, and I know the transformational power of just being out and entrenched in nature. But things like the Badlands always catch my attention because the colors are just so vivid within the rock. I just want to ride a motorcycle through there and kick it. Like, it's beautiful.
Yeah. It's crazy because you see pictures of it and it to like that to most people, even people in the Midwest, it doesn't look like something that would be in the
Right,
Midwest, but it's here.
right,
It's
absolutely.
here.
And I don't want to,
Yeah.
I okay. Let me back up. A little bit too excited here. Nature out here giving all the energy, all the nature vibes.
I mean, that's what it's for, man.
That you've taken all this passion, all of this energy, and you've created this Midwest color camp. And I want you to tell me
Mhm.
about that. How did you decide that this was going to be the work that you were going to partake on? Tell me about the Midwest color camp and what you've done with all this inspiration and your desire to share the beauty of nature and power of nature with people.
So Midwest Color Camp it came about because like I said, I started going outside more and more, and on a very popular Instagram outdoors account, they did a feature on me just going outside in the Midwest, and the
Okay.
engagement for the posts get like so much love and so many people talking, about the Midwest and like how they loved it and grew up and like it doesn't get enough shine. And I was like, damn, you're right. Like not enough people know about us. And so, what I did was started looking up because of like seeing how much people were really like there for me being in the Midwest, being out in the woods. I started researching like the nature that was around. Cause like I said, I didn't grow up with like going outdoors. So it was at the time something that was still, uncharted territory for me. And I started looking it up, like different nature spaces, and I was like, man, there is a mountain of nature here.
Right.
And I've been to like Washington State a bunch of times for hiking, camping. I've been to California. I've been a bunch of places, but I felt like I wanted to do something that was very specific and local for me. So
Mm-hmm.
I came up with towards the idea of Midwest Color Camp to promote and show the nature that we have here in the Midwest, but I wanted to do it primarily for marginalized communities, people of color, and LGBTQ and queer communities. I wanted to do something for us because, as a subset of already not getting enough exposure of the Midwest, there's even less exposure of people of color in the Midwest, going out hiking,
Right.
camping, doing all of these very naturey things. And so I came up with Midwest Color Camp to, like I said, highlight the nature that was here, but also find like community and other outdoor advocates here in the Midwest that came specifically from major cities. And that is a
Okay.
very central figure for Midwest Color Camp is the highlighting of nature only really only around major cities in the Midwest.
Okay. So people can say, all right, I live in Chicago or I live in Indianapolis and this is only 4 hours away.
Right. In Detroit, in Minneapolis, in Toledo, Cincinnati, Grand Rapids, just Indian, yeah, all over the Midwest, we have all of these major cities. And I also, a little random fact is I found out through doing Midwest Color Camp that all of these names like cities, towns, villages, hamlet, all of those things really mean something specific and they're not interchangeable. I didn't know that until doing this. But I decided to focus on major cities because that's where you get the biggest groups and like demographics of people of color and like other queer people in mass. And so, yeah.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that makes sense. That's probably where you have more densely populated areas of anybody,
Yeah.
but also people of color and marginalized communities. So are you guys
hmm
putting on trips? Are you just is it just an IG handle and movement? How are you engaging and empowering these people to come and experience the nature?
So, one thing I want to point out is you said, "Are you guys?" And the thing is, it's just Aaron. And
Okay. Okay.
Aaron is pulling the strings for everything. And I do have aspirations for bringing on more people, but right now all the leg work is my own, and I don't want to dilute that at all. So I just decided, really at the end of last year to start taking groups outside. Initially, Midwest Color Camp was about exposing the Midwest, exposing people to the nature that's around them and local. But then I decided to step it up a notch and say, hey, how about like I take the people out? Yeah, so I am starting to do organize group hikes and gatherings.
Wow. Okay. So you haven't done any to date just yet.
Well, I did a couple small ones over the summer of 2018, but they were
Okay.
like sort of in collaboration with other groups. It wasn't like a Midwest Colored Camp event. It was hosting an
Okay.
event for another group.
Okay, so it wasn't exactly a Spike Lee joint. It was a collaboration sort of deal.
Yeah, no. Right.
Okay, got you. But even having the
Yeah.
the initiative and desire to put that together, I'm excited for what you're going to come up with. So, what are you hoping to share with people? What's going to make your trips stand out to them when they come home? Are you going to do an educational component? Are you going to teach survival skills, or it's how are the trips going to be kind of outlined?
The trips, as of right now, the planning process is to primarily talk to people about apprehensions and fears as to why we don't get outside.
Mm,
Um, and then from that, after there's a little bit of a discussion about, these reasons, whatever those reasons are, everybody has their own personal reason for why they don't do it. And so after that, then I am physically taking the group on a hike, taking them out to the trail and sort of showing them through leadership and through example that like this is a space that is for you.
okay. And from the trips that you've even collaborated with so far, what have been the experiences that people have had Have there been, total 180-degree turnarounds when it comes to nature? Have people, broken down in tears or had very emotional moments like you did? What have been the response from the people who've gone out with you in some form already?
Yeah, so on one of the hikes that I sort of led the hike for another organization that I partner with frequently, one of the young ladies that went on the hike, she told me after the hike that it was her first time going out. She's been wanting to do it for years and like it was overwhelming, and that she, one, was, what did she say? She said that she was sort of mad at herself for not getting out sooner, but she was really happy that something existed, an organization existed to sort of help take the pressure off. And so I didn't even notice during the hike, but she told me that like during one of our like breaks, that as she was sort of taking the nature in, she started crying because of like what she was feeling. And I think that of everything that I've experienced with Midwest Color Camp so far, that little blurb stands out the most because it just shows me, one, that I'm not alone in feeling, my feelings, but also people do want this to exist. It's not like just me saying, I'm going to go out here and make this happen because it's what, I just want to do, and whoever don't like it, don't like it. But there's people that actually want a Midwest Color Camp. And so
Right.
that's a really, really, really big driving force.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you could experience that positive feedback and she was able to share that with you firsthand, because sometimes it is difficult to start a movement, something that's different, something that's a little bit out of the ordinary, and get no response and just hear crickets.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's someone that's also been, empowered and ignited to maybe share the experience with somebody else and, grow a movement. And I think it's a beautiful
hmm
thing. What else do you see Midwest Color Camp accomplishing in the future?
One thing that I definitely want to do is set up a workshop type platform where instead of like just hosting the group hikes, I want to, in almost like a auditorium or like classroom function, like sit
Right.
with people that are new to the outdoors or haven't gone at all or have only been out once or twice. And I want to like really dig into um, like those apprehensions and barriers to getting outside. Because, like, as of right now, it's sort of like a conversation along the hike, but I want it to have its own space so that, like, real critical thought and, like, discussion can be had about it.
I think that would be powerful. And for those who might be listening and following either the account or following the show that have the general, kind of hesitation towards being outdoors, what's outside for people of color that they're missing out on? What does that experience hold for them if they were to engage even in a small way with it?
That's a good question. I believe that one of the biggest things that you can really experience from going outside is seeing how small each of us are in comparison to like the natural world around us, because we live in a
Mm.
very, in your control world with phones and TVs and laptops and all this stuff that like you power on and you control and you tell it what to do. But there's like a submission that you give to nature and like how grand it is. I remember this one time I went to, I believe this was in central Illinois, Shawnee National Forest, Garden of the Gods. Um, I was standing next to like this sandstone monument. It was just so it was so huge. And I remember thinking like if this thing falls right now, there is nowhere that I could run that I could escape this. And it was very humbling to realize like how how much nature actually is in control. And, we
Right.
live within nature's boundaries. And I think that going outside really allows you to not only see and experience it, but also like appreciate and respect it. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that feeling, that sense that you are small in the world is actually one of those things that can bring a lot of perspective and even meaning to our lives. That's where sometimes religion and other
Hmm.
spiritual practices come into play
Yeah.
because they make you feel small.
Nature is church, man. Nature is church.
100%, bro. It definitely can be, and I think it's something that people would benefit from because, like you said, you felt that you could get, be in a Wile E. Coyote situation with that sandstone right there.
Yeah. It's like literally nothing that you can do.
Yeah. And that's important because, you mentioned us having control over our electronics, but the internet goes out. We ain't got control over shit.
That's
It's
it.
very fragile and it's a powerful illusion.
Yeah.
And how long ago did you take that first hike, that epic introduction into the outdoors?
Early winter 2016.
Okay. Okay. So very recently.
No, 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 no. So early winter 2015. So only a year more, but it's been about, 3 years and some change that I've been going outside.
And for yourself, being from South Side of Chicago, being in more of an urban environment, not exploring the outdoors, what has it given to you personally in terms of your identity as a person of color? You mentioned a lot about trauma and kind
Hmm.
of rewriting some of this old history. How has it impacted you as, a person of color?
I think more than anything, it has shown me how much we hold on to our generational traumas and how we make them a part of our everyday lives without even consciously thinking about.
Mm,
Because one of the things that, like I said, normally when I tell people about Midwest Color Camp or like even just me hiking or camping in general, it's like a gut reaction for them to be like, nah, why the hell would you do that? Like, it's not even a thought that it could be more beneficial than harmful. The thought is like, it is harmful. So, it's not something that is comfortable for people to really see themselves doing. So when I tell them that I do it regularly, it's like you can see like the overwhelming feelings that hit people's faces as soon as I'm like, yeah, last weekend I went camping alone, and they're like, what?
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that one of the biggest things that it's done for me, that hiking, camping, getting outdoors has done for me, has been to just let me see where those apprehensions, like where I'm holding them at, and it allows me to then move past it because
Mm,
I'm essentially facing that fear, and I'm all the better for facing the fear.
right. You're developing that self-reliance and just the confidence. I think at some level it distills to confidence.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Yeah, I can definitely see that. And since there are probably some people listening in that still aren't sure about it, we're going to make this like a hard pitch right now because I'm going to ask you some very specific questions. So, you ready?
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
All right, let's do the shit. So, in the 3 years that you've been out in nature, what have been two of the hardest lessons you've learned while, learning to be an outdoorsman? Where are some moments where you're like, yo, Aaron, you did not do your research on this one and we won't make this mistake again?
Hmm. I kind of feel like the initial question and then the add on, I kind of view them differently.
Okay.
So when I think of like what I have dealt with or gone through from an external point, has been the sort of like realizing that no matter what you do, you can't change how people view you and look at you. And it's not really your responsibility to do that. And I'm a
Okay.
person that, although I don't really seek approval, I don't like when people think sort of negatively, like negative thoughts, or I can tell that there's a negativity that a person is associating with me. And
Mm.
I'm specifically speaking about when I'm out on a trail and I get the weird eyes, or even just like somebody directly talking to me in a very condescending way, specifically white people when I'm outdoors. And like I said, one of the hardest things with that has been like allowing it to roll off my shoulder.
So you experience racism or bad vibes when you're out in the trail and you're still the only black person around. You can experience some we'll say subtle hostility from other outdoors people.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Um, and the thing is, the main reason why I talk about it, and I'll proudly talk about the things that like I experience, especially like in in relation to dealing with people who look at me crazy when I'm out on the trail, is that the reality is these people exist and they're out here, but we cannot allow them to be the reason why we don't go outside. Like
Hmm.
I've had people that were visually less capable of handling being outside or on the trail ask me if I needed like help or assistance and stuff like that. I have had people that like when I was camping have like moved their campsite away from me and stuff like that. So like aggression, some microaggressions, some macroaggressions, like it definitely happens. And I am fully under the belief now that, you know, fuck it, like fuck what they think, fuck what like the ignorances that come that could very easily keep me or keep someone else from going outside. I have learned to like literally not care.
Yeah.
Last summer I had a lady, so I'm out on the trail, and I usually bring my dog with me. I have a,
Hmm.
little 1 year old dog, and she loves to hike and all of that. So I'm out on the trail, and it's like a kind of a rocky sort of trail path. And there was a lady, a white lady, in a wheelchair. She was in a wheelchair, and let me just add this part. When I go out, I'm very like technical and like I wear like cargo pants and shorts and I have like doodads and gadgets and my backpack is always fat. Even if I'm like going out for just 2 hours, I look like I'm prepared to be outside for the winter. That's
Yeah.
just how I look when I go outside. And this lady that was in a wheelchair, this white lady that was in a wheelchair, she stopped me on the trail to ask me if I needed help figuring something out. Like
Hmm.
when I'm out on the trail, I look like I wrote the signage for the places that I'm in. I look like somebody who does this for a living. And it
Right.
was just, and I honestly believe that she believes that it was in good intentions, but it was the fact that like there was this black guy out here and she don't really see black people. So she, thought that I must be in trouble and I must be in need of her assistance.
Hmm.
And it's just, that, like I said, that's something that I had to learn how to like not care about because it's something that could definitely like deter you from wanting to go outside if you allow it to.
Yeah, and I'm glad you shared that because I didn't have any questions to ask about that at all until you mentioned it, and I was like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
there might be some not great vibes out there, because I mostly
yeah,
interpret the outdoors community to be very open, and it's not everybody. There's still people, and I'm sure there's some pockets of them that are very elitist and bigoted.
it's not. And people's racial hangups and racisms and microaggressions, they don't stop at the trail. In fact, I kind of feel like a lot of times it sort of revs it up because I'm part of a community of people of color that are advocates for the outdoors. And every single time that like one of my colleagues or acquaintances talks about the inadequacy or the inequality in outdoors lifestyles, you have this slew of white people that jump on that post and say, oh, nature isn't racist. You're making this up. You're being extra about it, all these things. And the point is that no, nature itself is not racist, but when you bring your bigotry and your racisms to the outdoors with you, you create the space that makes it uncomfortable for everybody else.
Mm.
It's something that I see, hear, and read a lot.
Yeah, especially if you're used to I mean, I can see it in a few ways where, some people of non-color they might
Mm-hmm.
they might see it as their escape from the city, okay,
Yeah,
we've finally gotten away from them and now they're
exactly.
out here where we are, like this is, ain't no famous black people out in the woods, or
Mm-hmm.
ain't no Bear Grylls for us. And they might feel that this is that last haven for them, or one of the few havens, and feel very much threatened by your presence and even the appearance in your dress, that you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely feel that vibe. And the internet, is a nice festering place for assholes anyway. So
Yeah,
um,
they are in abundance.
yeah. Wow, I really appreciate you sharing that, because that wasn't top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't top of my mind to ask, but that's important. I think people are gonna at least have some perspective, so that I think people of color, men of color, should go out in the outdoors, but they also need to be aware that they can encounter some of the same attitudes
Yeah,
they encountered in the cities. But that's true everywhere.
yeah.
You could get called out of your name in space at this point. I don't know.
Yeah, it's so crazy that so many people, like even people of color, like you said, it's not even something that you thought about until I mentioned it. It like that's part of the apprehension that we hold deep inside because like we have, and by we I mean people of color, we have all these, things that are inside of us that will keep us from doing something just because of the adversity that you face when you do it. But I'm not here, and I don't use my platform to sugarcoat shit. Like the racism is out there, the assholes are out there, but we still need to be out there too. Because as long as it's not a normal thing to just like see, like until what I'm doing isn't important, then it's extremely important.
That's definitely a solid way to put it.
Yeah.
I feel that. All things being equal, though, and all things being considered, I could see how safety would become more of a concern out in the wilderness, especially if you're new and you feel like you might encounter some aggression, because you might actually go missing in the woods instead of them having to deal with you in the city and drag you to the woods,
Yeah.
like you all the way out there. So, how can people of color and marginalized communities
Uh
too,
huh.
because that is important,
Yeah. For sure.
um, to for everybody to progress together. But there are also some challenges there, like when it comes to your physical safety. Sometimes you don't want to start in a quote unquote disadvantaged position by being
Mhm.
outdoors. So how could somebody who listens to this, is enthused by everything you've had to share, how can they safely get started exploring outdoors and nature?
What I firmly believe, something that, and I feel like most outdoors groups or companies will say this, but I honestly do it and I fully believe in it, is letting a couple people know where you're going and like what your sort of itinerary is, when you'll be back or when you intend to be back. And that itself, just doing that, just like letting your brother, your mother, your coworker, your good friend know, hey, I'm going out here to Buffalo Rock State Park. I plan to be out here for 4 or 5 hours. I should hit you up around 6 p.m. That itself is a really, 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 really good first step to securing like your safety and like your personal safety. For the most part, practicality is the word of the day for this specific thing. Like I said, let people know. And the other thing is, if you get a bad vibe from somebody, just get the hell out of there. Like that's for anybody, period. But especially for us, if you really genuinely get like a vibe like this might be confrontational, or like, that this person passed you this way and then, they're circling back, or like they're hanging around too long. Just, things that would normally stir up your suspicion. Like, listen to that. And, safety first. Honestly, it's always safety first. I want everybody to get outside. I want black men to be outside in numbers, in ridiculous numbers. But I need us to like pay attention and like, pay attention to the signs and be aware of your surroundings. And it's not something to like hang up the coat on going outside because you have to do that, because you got to do that anywhere. Anywhere you go as a black man in America, you have to pay attention. You just have to. And so it's no different on the trail. It's no different when you're camping. It's just that more action, I feel like, should be taken if you're like somewhere where there's really nobody else around. Yeah. So in terms of safety, always let somebody know. Usually I'd say like let a couple people know, but let somebody know your itinerary, when you're expected to like make contact with them again, and then also listen to your gut when you are out on a trail.
Yeah. And those are good reminders, even for experienced people. I'll say that my experiences, I've not always done the smartest or safest thing being out in the trails by myself. So those are two great pieces of advice. And you can also go with a friend if it's your first time, and bring a flashlight just in case you're out there longer than you think you will be.
Yep. So the thing is, I advocate for solo outdoor experiences. So if you are new, definitely bringing a friend or a family member is a good idea, because it also exposes both of you to nature. But for me, I'm primarily a person that, like I said, I advocate for solo hiking, solo traveling, because I feel like there's, like I said, a religion and a spirituality in it that when you are out there by yourself, it's nothing like it. It's really, I can't think of anything really that's like being out on a trail when like the sun is going down and like the weather is popping and like the animals and your snacks is on point, you got enough water. It's nothing like it, man. It's nothing like it. And so from the standpoint of solo travel, those 2 points that I mentioned are definitely like my suggestions. If you are somebody that is new, or still have those apprehensions, then definitely like bringing a friend instantly doubles your ability to feel and to be safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't want anybody to feel too pressed to do the solo thing, because I'm a solo hiker too. I've also almost died.
Yeah.
So I don't want anybody to feel too pressed. And your first experience was the one that transformed you into this, and it also had somebody else with it. So definitely, if you have zero experience and this is brand new, bring somebody with you, or find a group. I'm sure there's a local meetup group, or maybe Midwest Color Camp. You hit a trip.
Yeah, there are several. There's several groups that their thing is group hikes. So that's definitely an option.
And before we round things out, I did have one question, because this show is for men of color of all ethnicities and backgrounds. How do you engage with indigenous peoples when it comes to exploring the Midwest, or even sharing the education about outdoors?
So one thing that I do, and I think is super important, I do it on Instagram and Facebook, like on the Midwest Color Camp pages. But when like group hikes and group camping trips become a more central factor in Midwest Color Camp, I always acknowledge the first peoples, the indigenous peoples, the people who were here before other folks came here and disrupted a perfectly thriving way of life. So on any post that I post of anywhere that I go, any picture that I take, any scenery, I acknowledge the ancestral lands of the people, the original peoples, the indigenous peoples that that space belonged to. Same thing will go for group hikes. At the beginning of group hikes, I will definitely dig into the original and First Nations people that were there before any of the rest of us came there. It's a non negotiable thing.
Yeah.
It has to be. It has to be. It has to be a central thing to respect and acknowledge the indigenous peoples that were in the spaces that, we're going outside for fun. Those people that live there and, were the original stewards of this space, they need to be acknowledged. And so it's something that's very, very, very important to me.
100%, man. And you answer that so beautifully. And as many people know, it's my first time meeting people, when we're on the show, but I had a sense that you were aware of the history and were also doing your part to share it, to edify it, to pay homage and respect. And that's a beautiful thing. And I'm so glad people got to hear you share that, because sometimes that's a heritage that we completely forget about with our own traumas and struggles, especially as Black people. So appreciate that, bro. So much respect and love for you doing this in the right way. And I can't wait to see Midwest Color Camp just do its thing and grow how it needs to, and support those that are attracted to it. So let us know, man, as we round out, what do you have coming up? Where's your next hike or trip or adventure? What's the next stop? How can we get involved with Midwest Color Camp? What you got popping?
So the easiest thing to do is to follow and engage on Instagram, because that's primarily the post place. You can always visit MidwestColorCamp.com and check out the goings. One really cool thing that I have on the website that is nowhere else on MidwestColorCamp.com is I listed, and I just recently finished this. I listed all of the state parks that are within 90 minutes from every single major city in the Midwest.
Wow.
Every single one. So there's 596 state parks that are in the Midwest, and I listed every single one for every single major city that is within 90 minutes by car. So it is an incredibly, incredibly useful resource for people who don't know where to go, who don't know what to do, like who don't know what's around, but want to do something. You hop on the website, you look up state park day trips. It's like right there at the front of the website. You can't miss it. And it's just a list of places, and it's organized by distance from your city.
Okay.
So like from Chicago, it's organized like by whether it's 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, like that. It's very, 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 very useful. On a local level here in Chicago, this in the next upcoming months, I will be getting certified to utilize camping gear for free. So I will be able to take families that normally wouldn't camp or like wouldn't be able to get outside, or because being outdoors can be expensive, just like going and camping can be expensive. So I am working with a program that will allow me to take groups of people up to, I think it's like 35 people, out camping for completely free to them. All they have to do is show up, and I'll have everything else. So definitely be looking out for that in 2019 and the following years. I'm that's really probably my most exciting immediate thing that I'm doing with Midwest Color Camp is the getting certified for the camping stuff.
That's awesome, man. And best of success with that. Your passion, your enthusiasm for this just shows even across the airwaves, and I know people can feel it. And the fact that you're out here representing who you are and what you do in this space, and in such a way that has so much integrity, dude, that's a big deal. So thank you so much for being on the show, man. I hope we can stay in touch. I hope you guys definitely interact with Midwest Color Camp, and I'll plug this on the outro as well. But this is a big deal. It's cold right now. You have some time to plan when things get warmer. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think you're
Mm-hmm.
providing a great service, a great resource, a great opportunity. So, man, hope to have you back on the show. Hope you stay around with the Point Noir family, man. And
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely,
yeah, man. So thank you so much for the time, and we'll talk to you soon, Aaron.
for sure. Thanks for having me, man.
Of course, man. Anytime. Take care. What an amazing interview. Thank you so much for your time, Aaron. Again, ladies and gentlemen, that's Aaron Oschea of Midwest Color Camp. Make sure to follow him at Aaron Oschea on IG, or follow the movement, MidwestColorCamp.com or Midwest Color Camp on IG. Just speaking to people, people who've become wilderness experts and people that look like me is exciting. It's encouraging. And I know at some point in the future, maybe the not too distant future, there will be a Point Noir summit of some sort, and it's got to involve a hike. It's got to involve nature, because it's such a critical element of what's made me a successful adventurer. And I think going out with other men of color or people that look like you, it's just encouraging. And what an opportunity to expose people who otherwise wouldn't go out in the outdoors or stay overnight in a tent. Like, what better way to get introduced to that than by being around a bunch of awesome people who look like you? Then it's comfortable, It's kind of like a cool kid club. So that all being said, hopefully everybody got a lot of value out of this session. Definitely don't be afraid to leave us a review, a 5-star rating on iTunes. We check them all out, and we might start shouting out some of the reviews on the show coming up soon. And if you want to stay up to date on all the Point Noir goings-ons, make sure you check us out on Instagram at Point Noir Show. So until next time, as always, this has been Jerry the Third, aka Kimono Jack, and I'm signing off. Peace.